All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're bringing a deeply hidden and honestly highly misunderstood lived experience out into the open, one that affects countless women and girls. We're talking about autism, but absolutely not the version of autism you typically see in movies or read about in old school textbooks. We're going to look at exactly why so many women go literally decades without a diagnosis, what the subtle signs actually look like in real life, and how finally getting answers can be a total game changer. Working harder than everyone else just to keep up. Just think about that for a second. If you've spent your entire life feeling this exact way, just completely socially, emotionally, and professionally exhausted without really knowing why, I really want to validate right now that you are not alone. For so many women, this relentless, invisible effort is literally their daily reality. You might be holding the whole shebang together on the outside, but underneath, the engine is constantly running in the red. And here's the thing. A late diagnosis is absolutely not a personal failure. It's a systemic one. For decades, the entire diagnostic framework for autism was built around this really narrow, male-centered presentation. Researchers basically just studied boys, and that created a massive stereotype. You know the one, the socially withdrawn kid, the bluntly literal communicator, or the obsessive train enthusiast. But the reality for many autistic women, they're socially competent. They hold down demanding jobs. They maintain complex relationships. But the cost? They come home at the end of the day completely and utterly depleted. So you might be wondering, how do they manage to appear so neurotypical? Well, the answer is masking. Sometimes it's called camouflaging. This is the intensely exhausting process of observing and imitating neurotypical social behavior just to fit in. It's a survival strategy, plain and simple, and it's usually learned from a really young age. It proves that these women aren't somehow less autistic than the boys who got diagnosed early. They've just learned to hide it at an immense personal cost.
But what does masking actually look like on a day-to-day basis? It's not just trying to be polite. We're talking about carefully watching how others interact and actively replicating it. It's meticulously scripting conversations in your head long before you even have them. It's suppressing natural self-regulatory behaviors like stimming whenever you're out in public. A lot of women develop these incredibly elaborate social personas that honestly feel nothing like their true inner selves. They become hyper-attuned to others' emotions just to survive the social landscape. It is a constant, active performance. So yeah, no wonder it leads to massive burnout.
Section 1. Recognizing the subtle signs. Now, because this masking is so incredibly effective, the signs of autism in women are frequently way subtler and super easily missed by professionals. First up is this profound exhaustion after social interaction. And get this happens even when the social situations go well. You might actually have a great time at a dinner party, but the mental effort of constantly reading the room, monitoring your own responses, and managing the gap between how you feel and how you're expected to appear, it takes a massive invisible toll. We're talking about needing actual days to recover.
Next up, we have intense, focused interests. While deep passions are a total hallmark of autism, in girls and women, they often blend in perfectly with societal norms. So instead of, say, collecting train schedules, an autistic girl might have an encyclopedic knowledge of a specific book series, or psychology, maybe animals, or even a favorite TV show. Because these are socially acceptable interests for women, they rarely get flagged as a potential autism trait. To the outside world, it just looks like regular enthusiasm.
Another core experience is sensory sensitivity. A lot of autistic women describe spending a huge chunk of their daily energy just trying to tolerate their physical environment. This could mean managing severe discomfort from certain clothing fabrics, finding the hum of a refrigerator or background office noise literally unbearable, or just feeling entirely overwhelmed by the lights and sounds in a busy public space. It's important to understand this is a real physical distress we're talking about, not just a simple preference. Then there are the unspoken social rules. For neurotypical people, interpreting tone, subtext, or figuring out why someone says one thing but means another, well, that happens intuitively. But for an autistic woman, navigating this requires conscious, highly effortful processing. It's kind of like doing complex calculus in your head during every single conversation. This inevitably leads to a persistent, lifelong feeling of watching life from the outside, like you just never quite fit in. And because the medical and psychological systems just weren't built with these women in mind, they frequently fall through the cracks and end up with a whole string of misdiagnoses. Girls who struggle socially are often just labeled as too shy, anxious, or too sensitive. By the time they actually seek an assessment in adulthood, they might have spent literally decades being treated for anxiety, depression, OCD, eating disorders, or even borderline personality disorder. all while the underlying autism goes completely undetected. Section 2. The Solasta Assessment Process. Okay, so if this information is resonating with you right now, or if it sounds exactly like someone you love, there is an affirming path forward. Solasta Counselling in Calgary really recognizes that you absolutely do not need to fit an outdated stereotype to be properly assessed. They use this deeply empathetic, gold standard assessment process. It kicks off with a comprehensive clinical interview to explore your developmental history and what brought you in. Then they use standardized diagnostic tools like the ADOS-2 and the ADIR. They also integrate collateral information like old school records or input from family and follow the whole thing up with a plain language feedback session. You walk away with a really comprehensive written report. The psychologists there are looking at your whole picture, your unique history, your adaptations, and most importantly, what trying to fit in has actually cost you over the years. And here's a really important point. No doctor's referral is required to start this journey. None. You can book a free 20-minute consultation directly with them. The whole process is designed to be as accessible as possible, so you can explore this path of self-discovery with their expert psychologist without having to deal with any unnecessary gatekeeping. Section 3. What a late diagnosis means. So what actually happens after you finally get that answer? Getting an autism diagnosis in your 30s, 40s, or even beyond is a profoundly moving experience. It doesn't change who you fundamentally are, but it completely changes how you understand yourself. Getting this diagnosis reframes decades of your life. It replaces years of harsh self-criticism with genuine self-compassion. It finally gives you language for that lifelong feeling of being different, explaining all that exhaustion that was unfairly blamed on personal failings. Plus, it opens some very practical doors, like access to workplace accommodations and therapeutic approaches that are actually built specifically for your neurodivergent brain, rather than just generic strategies that never quite hit the mark. This entire transformative journey, moving from burnout and confusion all the way to clarity and self-compassion, aligns just perfectly with the name of the clinic itself. The word Solasta actually comes from Scottish Gaelic, and it means luminous or shining. And that's exactly the goal here, literally bringing those misunderstood, deeply hidden experiences right out of the shadows and into a luminous, shining light. It's all about finding accommodation rather than just white-knuckling your way through life. I'm going to leave you with this empowering thought to reflect on today. What if the way your brain works isn't a flaw to be corrected, but just a completely different way to shine? As you consider what this newfound understanding could mean for your future, just remember that getting answers is the very first step toward building a totally different, much kinder relationship with yourself. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning, keep asking those big questions, and I'll catch you next time.